Legend to the War here, and today I'm going to be covering a bit of the blog post from Magic and Total War Warhammer 3, which was released yesterday. I know I'm a little bit late on this. I wasn't sure if I wanted to cover this one because there's a lot of stuff in here that I'm a bit iffy about, but I've had a bit of time to think about it. I'm like, I'll just give my thoughts about it, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong about some of the stuff, because sometimes you guys are actually better informed about the stuff than I am, and that actually helps me to shape my opinions as well. So I'm not just here just shoveling news into your face. You guys are also helping me understand what the hell they're talking about, because while they do give some information here, it doesn't give us a perfect picture, and sometimes you guys have better insights than I do. So overall, I've already read the blog. There's some interesting things in here. There's some things that have me very concerned for in Warhammer 3. It seems to me like they're really trying to change a lot of elements from Warhammer 2. And that's fine. Some of the elements definitely should be changed, but in my opinion, magic is one of those things in Warhammer 2 that actually works really well. It's really fun to use for the player. So any sort of changes and tweaks or even nerfs to magic, I don't want. So I'm kind of resistant to the change in this way, but I'm sure once I play it, I'll get a better feel for it. I just haven't played Warhammer 3 yet, so all I've just got here is just numbers and shit to look at. But anyway, let's just go through it. So big things to address first with the changes to Winds of Magic. It's not detailed here, but this is stuff that I already know. Currently in Warhammer 2, the maximum amount of Winds of Magic that you can have at any given time is 30, right? And that the amount of Winds of Magic recharge rate depends on how much that you have currently spent. The base Winds of Magic, currently in Warhammer 2, is 1 Winds of Magic every 6 seconds. So if you spend half of your Winds of Magic, you will double the recharge time. So if you spend half of your total, let's just say you have 60, which is the base, and then you spend 30 of it, you'll get 1 Winds of Magic every 12 seconds. And then if you go down to 15 Winds of Magic, it's then 24 seconds. So every time you half it, you double your time. Of course, there are abilities such as Arcane Conduit, Greater Arcane Conduit, various abilities that will increase the speed to get that Winds of Magic out of the reserve and into the pool of magic. Another thing is that Winds of Magic reserves are not depleted as it is recharged into the pool. So if you've only got 1 Winds of Magic remaining, you can still fill an entire 30 Winds of Magic back into that if you're patient enough, and you only deplete your Winds of Magic when you actually cast spells. Now, it doesn't say whether or not that is the case in Warhammer 3, and when I played the survival battle back in the day, a couple of months ago, because that was in the Realm of Chaos, and the Realm of Chaos has unlimited reserves, I wasn't able to check that. So that is a question that is not answered here, and that is something that I'm curious about. Because one thing that they could change, and I think it's very important, would have liked this information, is whether or not Winds of Magic in Warhammer 3 ticks over as it is recharged. Let's just say you start off with 60 Winds reserve, and you have 10 Winds of Magic to start off with in your pool. And then as it goes to 11, the reserves goes down to 59 without you having casting anything. Or is it just like with Warhammer 2, where it will continue to recharge it, and only when you cast spells does it deplete the reserves? Again, don't know. So anyway, going over the stuff that's actually here, a basic early game starter army begins with 50 magic reserves. Currently in Warhammer 2 it's 60, but we also need to keep in mind that the amount of magic that you can actually hold at any given time goes up to 120 in Warhammer 3. It is in a region with blowing Winds of Magic, providing 0 reserves per turn. Assuming nothing special happens, it remains that way. So it seems now that Winds of Magic reserves is dependent on increasing and decreasing over time. It just doesn't instantly increase. So currently, if you go into a region that has tempestuous Winds of Magic, you'll just immediately get 50 extra Winds of Magic. Or if you go into an area that has no Winds of Magic, it's minus 50. But it seems like in Warhammer 3, you move into a region, it doesn't change it right away, but if you stay there over the turn, you will gain more to your reserves. And even if you move out of the region, you'll still gain that unless there's, some other factors applying to it. So the same army moves into a region with calm Winds of Magic, which reduces by 10 per turn. It'll have 40 reserves at the start of the next turn and will continue to drop the longer it remains here. If it is in a demon faction army, it'll eventually start to receive debuffs, with the opposite true at the other end of the scale. More on that in a moment. So, on that note, it seems like demons need to remain with high pools of Winds of Magic, or else they will basically start to degrade. Now, I do like that because that kind of feels lore-friendly. The demons need winds of magic in order to sustain themselves in the mortal realm. And of course, in the demon realm, they have unlimited, so that's not a problem for them. They can exist there just fine. So, demon factions will need to constantly, even Khorne will need to constantly get winds of magic. It's just with Khorne, he can't actually cast spells, but he still needs to the winds of magic to sustain his army. So I do like that. That sounds cool, but we'll have to see how that actually is applied. So once again, that army moves presumably in some sort of marathon into a new region, this time with strong winds of magic, providing 5 winds per turn. It also adopts the channeling stance, increasing it by a further 15. So I think that this is a buff for the channeling stance. So the way channeling stance currently works is that it provides 15 winds of magic, provided you stay in channeling stance. So as soon as you drop out of the stance, you just lose the 15. So you have to attack while in channeling stance or be attacked while in channeling stance to get those 15 winds of magic. But with this, you stay in channeling stance for a turn, it puts in the winds of magic into your reserve pool, and then you can just come out of the stance and you still get to keep it. That's what I'm interpreting that as, and that's cool. I like that for channeling stance. That's good because it makes this more useful. Because currently I barely ever use channeling stance. Okay, and is joined by a hero with the magical reserve skill, giving an additional 20% gain whenever the reserves are increasing. It's a total of 22% on the following turn. Maths is not correct there. Nope. I think their maths is off. That would be 24, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is 20% of 20, right? Because it's 5 plus 15. Basic maths here, okay? Just basic maths. 5 plus 15 equals 20. And then multiply that by 1.2 should equal 24, I believe. Is that? I'm not wrong about that, am I? Because sometimes I get that shit wrong. Okay? So that's not right, or that's not right. One of them's wrong. Either that's supposed to be 10%, or that's supposed to be 24. Okay. Whatever the case is, this is a bit iffy. So currently the way that Magic Reserves works is that it just gives you the 15 extra winds of magic. And it's at the end of the magic line for any wizard. But now it's a percentage gain whenever reserves are increasing. So that could be iffy. Another thing is that it will cap out at 100 in the next few turns. So is Winds of Magic Reserves now capped at 100? Currently, there is no cap at Winds of Magic. That I've seen it. You can have 1,500 reserves if you have enough put into it. So this has implications for things like the buildings like the Black Pyramid of Nagash, the Vault of Nagash. Does that still provide Winds of Magic Reserve, or does that provide additional gain whenever reserves are increasing? So has anything that has previously provided just base Winds of Magic now just providing percentage gain? Because if that's the case, that is a significant nerf for new armies, because what you currently can do in Warhammer 2 is like you just got heaps of reserves due to knowledgeable, right? Which we don't know if knowledgeable is even going to be in the game in Warhammer 3. You just recruit a lord and they've instantly got like 200, 300, 400 winds of magic, right? And you go into a battle and just use that lord and they can just destroy everything because they've got so much winds of magic reserves. Whereas you recruit a new army and they've always got 50 reserves. It's just that they'll get to 100 quicker the more like knowledgeable or Vault of Nagash or whatever that it is that you've got, and we'll just get to this point quicker. So this is definitely iffy. This needs to be elaborated on. I don't think they're going to elaborate on it, but this doesn't really tell us at all how it's actually going to work. This is omitting so much data, so we'll just have to wait and see with that. We either need to get gameplay or they need to give us fuckloads more examples, because currently in Warhammer 2 there's just so many ways to augment Winds of Magic, and that this is just like the bare minimum, and they didn't even get the fucking maths correct on it. It's like, go back to primary school. Anyway, whatever. I'm fine with it. It's just a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. So hopefully that's fairly clear. No, it's not. It's actually really not clear. For one thing, the maths is wrong. So good job. Karas Fatweaver is laughing at you right now. There are numerous other ways to increase or decrease your reserves pool or impact your enemies. Dilemmas, research skills, post-battle items. So that's cool. We don't know what those are. It's just they're just saying, hey, there's more ways to do it, but we're not going to tell you what those are, and that's fine. We'll have to just wait for gameplay. That's fine. So one of the key factors when playing demon factions is that even if you have no or minimal spellcasters, you'll want to keep an eye on it for battle benefits for high reserves and the drawbacks of low. Those are. All demon factions receive replenishment rate, leadership, and physical resistant debuffs when at low reserve. So that's really going to impact Khorne, which is why you're going to want to have your just be at your cap constantly. So I wonder if Khorne can actually go into channeling stance. That'd be interesting. We'll have to wait and see. And since he doesn't have wizards, how's he going to get that sweet 10 to 20% gain to get that sweet 2 to 4 plus 4 or whatever? Who knows? At high, the buffs are campaign movement range, and Cinch gets barrier recharge speed, so that could be good. Don't really know exactly from a unit-to-unit basis what the barrier... We know that the barrier is basically like the Protoss in Warhammer 2. So, yeah, Cinch is basically the Protoss. They have a secondary pool of health. Well, it's actually their primary... This is the first one that will get used up, which is like shields. It gets damaged, and then when they're out of combat, they recharge really quickly. We don't know if, like, with health pool, there is a limit to how much they can recharge. This is just, like, there's so much potential information that just isn't there right now, so we have to speculate. So we'll just have to see. Remember that the winds of magic have a lot of implications for Cinch and can be manipulated directly. Yep, that's cool. We just need to know more information. Khorne, spell resistance. Note that Khorne has no spellcaster units. This is only real benefit for them. Yeah. So, not magic resistance, actually spell resistance, so spells will do less damage to him. So, cool, that's good, I guess. Nurgle will get melee defense, Slaanesh will get speed. Cool. Okay, so what about battle? This reserve pool represents the amount of magic you have to draw on through the course of the fight. It slowly moves from the reserve pool to your power pool, from which you directly spend it on spells. So that was what I was talking about before, about whether or not it 1-to-1 points just, like, transfers over. It gives the indication that that is the case, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that is the case, because honestly, blog points are not well written and they're not well thought about. Case in point over here, I feel like a lot of the time these are written in a rush. They're not spell checked, they're not fact checked, so I trust it very little. But it's basically like, maybe it'll do it. If the reserve run out, you will need to either make do with what you have or find a source of magical power on the battlefield, draining it from an enemy spellcaster with a Cinchian ritual, for example. So yeah, this is like arcane conduits will generate extra winds of magic even when you're completely out of your reserves. That's currently the case in Warhammer 2. How it works in Warhammer 3 leaves to be seen, but we know that arcane conduits should still exist. The opening deployment phase gamble for power from your reserve works much the same way. Okay, this one here is kind of important for me because gambling just sucks for me. Though your total starting power is always a percentage of your starting reserves. Now, that's not currently the case in Warhammer 2. Currently, the case in Warhammer 2 is just random, and it's usually a random number between 5 and 25. But you might be thinking, but sometimes I have 0, right? When you have 0, that's because there's a debuff on you that's providing you with Winds of Magic starting amount minus 5, 10, 15, something like that. So you're being debuffed. Same thing that when you get 30, you are buffed by something. So for example, the vampire counts in their bloodline. I think it's the Necroc bloodline, I'm not entirely sure. That might be the second level. Anyway, provides you with 20 extra starting Winds of Magic, which means at a bare minimum, unless you're getting massively debuffed, you'll always start off with 25 Winds of Magic as the vampire counts if you've got that bloodline sorted. So with this, it's not random anymore. It's based on a percentage. Now, we don't know what that percentage is, so it could be 5%, 10%, 15%, 100%. Don't know. We just, these things are not particularly clear. And the thing is, the percentage of what it is kind of important to understand how you're going to use your magic effectively. So, and again, if your max cap is 100, but the pool can actually go to 120, what does that mean? So we'll see. Ergo, the higher the reserves, the more power, no matter how bad your luck. But then, if you press gamble, and then it can give you either more or less. Now, I'm curious as whether gambling will provide you with more reserves or less reserves, because currently gambling just provides you with starting Winds of Magic. So gambling right now only really matters if you need to cast spells straight away, which is why, you know, I take the piss out of Ranald. He's a bitch. He's always giving me less. But it doesn't matter that much unless I absolutely needed to cast something straight away, which sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. Let's see. So reserves will return to their pre-battle levels once you're back on the campaign map. So you use up your entire reserves, you come out of the battle, and then you start another battle, and then you get to just basically replenish all your ammo straight away again. It's currently the case with that in Warhammer 2. I like it that way, although I'm sure some people would like it if Magic was nerfed, and that if you spent all of your ammunition and all of your Magic reserves in one battle, you had to wait until the next turn before it would come back. But that's not going to be the case, it seems. So this is partly for balancing and fun reasons. Yep, for fun reasons. But also represents how the Winds of Magic are never drained, simply channeled. I just want to point out to all of you sourpusses that are like, you should not charge all of your ammo right away. Look, CA said, and fun reasons, okay? Case closed. So what if, just an example, you took your army, mortal or otherwise, inside the realm, Chaos Realms, where the Winds of Magic are unpredictable and powerful, a constant roiling storm of devastation and regeneration, a storm of magic, if you will. So if, hang on, let me just point something out. If the Storm of Magic provides unlimited Winds of Magic in the Chaos Realm, wouldn't that actually be incredibly predictable if it's always infinite? So anyway. So Storm of Magic. Storm of Magic is a new rule set for Total War Warhammer 3. One that always active in the non-Chaos Khorne realm. So only, it doesn't apply in Khorne's realm. It only applies in Nurgle, Slaanesh, and Tzeentch. Khorne sucks. I'm just going to say it right now. But anyway. If you are to fight a battle there, other than a survival or quest battle, it'll use these settings. So there's always a Storm of Magic in the Chaos Realm. At least that's my interpretation of it. Straight off the bat, reserves are infinite in the Storm of Magic. Yeah, so we already knew that from a little while ago. And that's sort of like what I was talking about there. You know, unpredictable means that you can't predict how much it's going to be. So infinite, if it's always infinite, that's very predictable. It's like, hey, guess what? It's a number between 1 and 1. Oh, I can't predict that number. Okay, how quickly can you move them to your power pool will still be important, but you'll never run out of energy to channel into big booms, magical lasers, or spirits. Cool. The Storm of Magic also changes as the battle goes on, each lore having a chance to be the next in ascendancy. Which lore is currently empowered has a number of effects laid out below, as well as giving you access to that lore's Cataclysm spell as an army ability, charged by any spell casting by either side on the field. Tough luck, Khorne and dwarfs. Once charged, the change to the next random spell lore begins to count down. You lose access to the Cataclysm spell if the lore changes before you cast it. You can only use this Cataclysm spell if your army has a spellcaster, and I think it has to be of that particular type, though the passive... Well, it just says here, has a spellcaster. So what if it's a beast Cataclysm spell and you're like, well, I'm a Fire Lord. Boom. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. Not particularly clear. I think there really needs to make a distinction here about has a spellcaster of that lore. I think that needs to be important, but we'll see. Though the passive effect of an Ascendant lore are still applied without one. So, okay, we'll get to that in a bit. So, Cataclysm spells are ludicrously powerful abilities that mark the end of the lore's ascendancy once unlocked. So, do you have to unlock it in the skill tree? Or, like, do they have this point in the skill tree somewhere, or is it just automatic within each spellcaster? Not entirely sure. I imagine it would just be automatic, because this is only active in the Chaos Realm, and if you had to unlock it in the skill tree, it's likely that the AI will probably never get it, which means it'll be a player-only ability, which I'm fine with, but for balancing reasons, that would be bad. Anyway. With one cast available for each side of the battle, they include massive buffs to allied troops, huge persistent heals, or a fair share of devastating thunderstorms and volcanic eruptions. They are simply not very fair. Yeah, I'm totally fine with not fair or asymmetric battles. That's basically how I run my campaigns. And you wouldn't expect things to be particularly fair in the realm of chaos, so I'm okay with that, depending on how things go. But anyway, here's what each lore gets. Note that there is no requirement to be using that lore on one of your... here we go. There is no requirement to be using that lore on one of your spellcasters. You still get access to the passive buff and Cataclysm spell as long as you have any caster. Right. So, okay. So you could have a lore of... you could be Little War and be casting all this shit. constantly. So yeah, Khorne and dwarfs still can't do it because they don't get spellcasters, but everybody else can, even if they don't get these laws. Gotcha, right. So there also aren't cataclysm spells or special effects for every law in the game, just those laid out below. Yes, but every spellcaster can do it, so that's fine. As long as it's, yeah, that makes sense to me at least. So, Law of Beasts. So it's the 8 main laws of magic. So all laws of magic are like, these are the purest ones, and all other laws of magic are essentially just like manipulations, corruptions, or combinations of these 8 laws. So these are the pure ones. So high magic, for example, is like the combination of all of them, and necromancy is kind of like death magic and shadow magic. Make it up as you go along, really, sort of thing. But anyway, these are the pure ones. So Law of Beasts. All units become immune to psychology and gain charge bonuses. That as a passive is kind of crap. I'm not a big fan of immune to psychology. That would be useful for Skaven, I suppose. Be useless for vampire counts, since their units are all immune to psychology anyway, but whatever. So, Cataclysm Spell, Mercier's Monstrous Regiment. The strength of the wild is imbued on one unit's weapon damage, armor piercing, melee attack, physical resistance. So this would be good if you're rolling in with a Doom stack, and like single entity Doom stack, you pop that down to single entity, that seems really powerful. Law of Life. All units gain perfect vigor. Sucks to be a Grail, no? Don't get any benefit out of it. But that otherwise would be fairly useful. Cataclysm Spell, Storm of Renewal. A Tree Sprout. Well, hang on a second. All units gain perfect vigor. I'm just thinking, what if you're in Force March? Assuming Force March still works the same way in Warhammer 3 as it does in Warhammer 2. Does it actually give you your vigor? Because currently in Warhammer 2, if you're playing as Bretonnia and you have an army full of Ground Knights and you get caught in Force March, they're not tired. So that we'll have to wait and see, but I don't mind that one because Perfect Vigor is good, being fresh as opposed to tired. A tree sprouts from the ground as raw life energy flows across the battlefield, providing a huge regeneration aura. That seems good. I guess it would be both sides are getting access to this at the same... Hang on, do both sides get access to the exact same one at the same time? So all combatants on the battlefield all get Perfect Vigor? Or does one side get one and the other side gets another just randomly? I feel like all sides get the same one, but I'm not entirely sure. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about that. But yeah, regen aura there. I always like regen. Very good for single entities if you've got them rolling around. So, Law of Death. All units gain armor piercing melee damage. That'd be useful for vampire counts, so... Yep, that's good. Cataclysm Spell, Ashes and Dust. A suffocating dust cloud chokes the life from enemies in a wide area after a short wind-up. So that's just basically a stationary vortex spell with an undisclosed how big it is, but they said it's going to be super powerful, so you're definitely going to want to steer clear of that if you're not the one casting it. Law of Fire. All units get bonus melee attack. Obviously, if you've got a melee heavy army, that's going to be useful there. Cataclysm Spell, Magma Storm. So Flame Storm is currently in Warhammer 2 the best of the vortex spells. It lasts the longest, it does the most damage, and it's actually the cheapest. So Magma Storm is like a step above that. A massive eruption protrudes from the ground, burning everything in the area in magical fire. So imagine it's just like Flame Storm, except just way bigger. So see how that goes. It's quite possible that these sort of vortex spells are mainly going to affect multi-entity units like infantry, and single entities will just be able to walk right through them and be like, "Ooh, I'm taking 5 damage." You know, basically nothing. So this is... But it largely depends on how they've balanced that. So I'm not expecting huge changes, but we'll see. Law of Heavens. All magic units deal extra damage and extra armor piercing damage. So that's good for... That's good for missile units and melee units, so for both there, that's good. Cataclysm Spell, Thorsen Thunderstorm. A great storm develops above the battlefield, annihilating an area with lightning bolts. So it's basically like a constant barrage of Uranan's thunderbolts. That seems fine to me. Law of Light. All units gain immunities to psychology and magic attacks. I really don't value immunity to psychology that much. There are definitely some races that benefit a lot from it, but... most of the time, if I'm playing a race that is badly affected by immune to psychology, I usually don't play into that weakness. So, for example, Skaven, who are fucking cowards, right? I usually go ranged, and ranged armies are not affected by leadership debuffs anywhere near as much as melee units, because while you're shooting, you're not taking leadership penalties. You're only going to take leadership penalties when you get into melee or they're firing back, in which case having them rout isn't actually a bad thing. So, depends on the situation. yeah, I usually don't play into that weakness. And magic attacks. Now, magic attacks in Warhammer 3 should be better than they are in Warhammer 2. Currently, magic attacks are really hit and miss because there are more units in the game that have magic resistance than physical resistance. So it's actually better on average to have physical attacks. But in Warhammer 3, magic resistance doesn't block magic attack. The only thing that should be able to block magic attack is actually ward save, which also blocks physical resistance, because they've changed magic resistance to spell resistance. So having magic attack should be superior in all cases, because anybody that's resistant to magic would be equal or better resistant to physical anyway. So the Cataclysm spell Time Amok. The flow of time is altered over a portion of the battlefield, improving allies' reload skill, speed, melee attack. So this is basically like the spell that was already there. I just can't remember the time warp spell. God, the buff spell. I just can't remember the exact name of it. So it's just like a super buffed up version of that spell. Just bigger. So that's fine. That's actually a pretty good spell. Law of Metal. All units receive bonus armor and missile resistance. Yeah, that's not going to be a weakness at all. I'm not being sarcastic there. That's fine. Missile resistance is good, unless you're going up against Khorne. It's useless. Cataclysm spell, Gehenna's Golden Globe. A great molten sphere emerges from the earth and rolls across the enemy forces. Cool, so it's basically like a wind spell, except it's a ball. Whatever, that's fine. We'll have to see how it actually applies. Law of Shadows. All units get faster charge and movement speed. Cataclysm spell, Dance of Despair. A haunting tune envelops enemies in an area, reducing their leadership, melee defense, and melee attack. Cool, so it's a big debuff. It's cool. I guess, yeah, we don't know the exact effects of it because it doesn't give the exact details, but you can kind of imagine just be like a really big spell of what we've already seen before, so that's cool, whatever. Okay, so Blood of Khorne, raging against magic as he does against everything, because he's a R-word. His forces receive bonuses to their natural spell resistance in a storm of magic, toughening against the unnatural forces around them, but not to the benefits of the Ascendant Law. Okay. Such is his anger at the storm that Khorne gains the ability to summon demons more easily, allowing for a surprise bloodthirster should your opponent get too cocky. Okay, so he can just, instead of being able to cast spells, he can just summon shit. Okay. How that'll come into effect, I'm not entirely sure. So basically, Khorne will get other things that just aren't really very well detailed here. So, okay. On the flip side, Tzeentch's mastery of magic means a Tzeentch army in the Storm of Magic battle gets to pick what the first law and ascendancy will be, making it possible to tailor to their strategy. His forces also have a lot of abilities through armies and characters to increase the rate at which their power recharges from the reserve, making an infinite reserve quite strong. Yeah, that was always going to be fucking nasty when dealing with Tzeentch, and just be delicious if you're playing as Tzeentch. It really does seem that Tzeentch is going to be like the favored race. They're basically going to, from my point of view, Khorne is evil. No. From my point of view, every Total War game has like a race that Creative Assembly is like, this is the race we're actually going to put effort into. And it seems to me like in Warhammer 3, that race is Tzeentch. Now, I know that their roster is really fucking small, but that's probably because they're going to have the most DLC. Because you can kind of predict a few things with Creative Assembly. They totally could do the other units that Tzeentch is going to have, right? But if they're going to be like, yeah, we're going to put the most effort into Tzeentch because Tzeentch is the most fun, right? And they're going to, maybe Tzeentch will get 3 DLCs where all the other Chaos Gods get 2. Hence, they need to keep gaps in their army. Maybe, who knows? So by the time that Warhammer 3 is finally wrapped up and finished, I reckon Tzeentch is going to be like what Skaven is like in Warhammer 2, and what the vampire accounts were like in Warhammer 1. Because in my opinion, the vampire accounts got the most love in Warhammer 1. They got next to no love in Warhammer 2. And the Skaven got the most love in Warhammer 2, and will get continued lots of love in Warhammer 3. Here's hoping for Thanquol. Anyway, that's the end of this one here. I've gone through all this stuff here. Feel free to let me go if I know if I get anything wrong. I'm not infallible. I definitely get things wrong. I'm still questioning whether I even got the maths right on this one here. I'm pretty sure that 20% of 20 is not 2. Okay, I'm pretty sure about that. But feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about that. Anyway, that's the end of this one here. Appreciate you guys. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on this, because the stuff that you comment on here does help me to shape my opinions. I am not just spewing information back at you. I am also absorbing what you're saying as well. So your opinion of the game might be shaped by what I say, and equally so, my opinion is also being shaped by what you're saying. So I do want to read your comments, even though it may not seem like I don't respond to a lot of them. I am reading them and taking a lot what you're saying into consideration, and structuring my future videos based on them, rather than just responding for ages as a keyboard warrior in the comments, which I think is not a great use of my time. But anyway, let's end this one here. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next time, fuckers. Bye.